Hello, welcome. Let's speak about the classes because this is one subject that hasn't been touched by the developers in a long time. So, the problem with the current gameplay loop is that the classes are not really up to standards. Most of them are not really that good anyway. Well, obviously, the top three classes will be number one, Rats, number two, the Phoenix Brigade, number three, the Angel of Spades. I don't think this changes at all. Plus, we have some close quarter combat, some melee combat classes that don't actually make sense in the current game. Now, as a little introduction, the best weapons in the game will always be the machine guns and some of the, well, you can call them machine guns, but they're sometimes something really different. This is a machine gun, but it's counted as a flak cannon, and as you can see by the damage and by the caliber and by the fire rate and by the distance effective range, it's a massive amount of damage it can deal. But this thing over here, it's a plasma generator, but it's counted as an assault rifle, but it's actually, it's, I don't know how you can call it, but it shreds. Besides, it has armor penetration as a perk, so yeah, machine guns or assault rifles will be the best things in the game, in the current gameplay loop where you need to kill a huge amount of enemies. So, let's get back over here. Now, those are the best classes and you can modify them a little bit. So first of all, let me show you my rat. My rat. As you can see, I kept the Marauder perk because this is the best perk in the game currently, in my opinion. I also need the shotgun. Well, I guess I can show you on Percy because he's already maxed them out. So, plus 3 more items from enemies, but this has been heavily nerfed to the point where you don't even get many materials from this. You mostly get some drinks, some food, some ammo, some other stuff, but you get a lot of backpacks, you get a lot of vests, so it's really good in the beginning anyway. 50% more shotgun ammo damage, which is great because shotguns are kind of useful in many ways, but they're not really a killing weapon anymore, they're just a tool. This will help you a lot in the game as well. Receiving wounds is the best way to die in the game, so you need this. It's almost mandatory to keep this one. Now over here I've changed the other stuff. It was basically trigger perks that, yeah, not really that important. They were mostly going to give you a little bit of damage, a little bit of accuracy from cover, and I forgot the other one, doesn't matter. So, combat reflexes, athletics, and then hardened. Because even if you don't receive a wound, even if you have good protection, you still need this one because the current armor system is designed in such a way where you cannot possibly defend against all of the damage types, and you also have grenades and some other stuff. So it's almost going to be impossible to make a perfect armor or just a perfect armor set unless you upgrade your armor sets. But to upgrade armor sets, you need at least tier 6 armors to the point where, well, it's too much hassle to even start baiting that. So yeah, you need entropy resist, which is cold and fire resist together, and then you also need a little bit of poison resist and beam resist, and forget about shock resistance. If you have enough dodge, it doesn't really matter because the shock weapons don't really hit and it's a high amount of variability to them anyway. Unless they make shock grenades, but there are also a lot of shock weapons as well. Doesn't matter. So this is kind of like the baseline for a class, and now we know. So let's go and look at Scouts of Hades. Now, the point of the video is to show newer players, but also veteran players, how they can mix and match classes, but also what are the most important perks from some classes. So we'll start by presenting all of the weaker ones that are not in top 3, and then we'll speak some more about some of them as well. Now, the Scouts of Hades is kind of like your baseline class, and I'll show you why. You have Resistance, Hardened over here, Training, which gives you range accuracy, and then you have less scatter, so these two will be great for a weapon. Well, scatter is a little harder to explain, but if you're going to shoot a lot of bullets or shotgun shells or anything like that, the shots will scatter, so accuracy is only good for 1 or 2 shots, let's say, and long range accuracy, while this one will make all of your projectiles be in a tighter cone so they hit the same target multiple times or they hit in a straight line. So if you're going to fire, let's say, a machine gun with 6 bullets, or let's say 8 shots in the same round, probably half of them will just scatter around and they'll not hit much. So yeah, this is basically for SMGs. Well, I guess it says SMG and shotguns over there, so it's not really assault guns or anything, assault rifles or machine guns. So take that into consideration. So this is kind of a useless thing unless you use it in the beginning of the game with these weapons. Now, Blind Fury, I don't know, the trigger perks need to be really modified because they don't make sense in the current meta of the game, sadly. Sorry, I had to sneeze. And the bodybuilding is kind of nice because it offers you a few defensive options. Now, a little HP here and there will not keep you from dying, but sometimes it will make it less stressful and sometimes we might even survive a bigger chain of wounds. This one is kind of useless as well because, well, it doesn't last that long, and by the time you need it, if you get hit once, that means you're already in trouble. So, as you can see, the baseline class over here is Scots of Hades that gives you 2 defensive perks, more HP and more damage resistance, more accuracy and less scatter, and the trigger ones are not so bad, but they mostly tap your food. So more damage, and more dodge. So as you can see, this is the baseline class, and this is what every class should kind of be made out of. Unless you're in the endgame, in that case it doesn't matter because you mostly can go aggressive, but not too aggressive. And this is kind of like the baseline for my class as well, if you take a look at it. So we have... The only thing is that this one has more utility and looting possibilities, while the other classes don't really have anything like this. So I think all of the classes should have an economic perk and economy perk. So this is defensive, two defensive things. This is mostly aggressive, 2 aggressive things. And of course the damage over here. So, Eclipse Blades. Do you need anything from them? Not really, because this is just melee accuracy. But they have the combat reflexes and athletics. So as you can see, you can even make this class into... How should I put it? Into a ranged build as well. Just because you have the dodge chance and athletics. So you can use this as a super heavy defensive build, especially with Kenzie Yukio. This is just melee damage. This is all damage, but you need to kill a melee enemy. An enemy in melee. Which is not so bad. So I guess if you use these two with combination with this one, you can actually make some things work. Plus the regeneration is nice if it gets triggered. Now the Tifton Elite. Well, the problem with this is that it doesn't explain a lot of things, so a lot of things need to be thoroughly tested in my opinion. Stabilizing all wounds if you get a wound can be good because sometimes you'll get 2 or 3 wounds at the same time, but the more important thing will be over here, the grenade damage, and I was thinking of making a class with this as well because you not only have the grenade launchers, and you can store the grenades inside of them, but you also have a lot of types of grenades. You can also, I think you can store the spoiling grenades, the Quasimorph grenades in the weapons as well, and they'll not spoil. You have the fragmentation grenades, which are huge because they have a big knockback chance, they have a big throwing range, they do decent explosion damage and have a radius of 3. While the Cryo Nova does a lot of cold damage, which most enemies have 0 defense against, so this grenade will mostly one-shot everyone. But the problem is that the explosion radius is just 1. You also have the makeshift grenades, you also have the Molotov cocktails. The Inferno incendiary grenades, which are awesome and they just burn everything to ashes. Then you have the plasma grenades, which as you can see have a radius of 2. Yeah, these things are designed to kill bosses, well not really bosses, but you know, the strongest enemy types. The most elite soldiers. And you have also thermal grenades, and you also have plague grenades. So yeah, a lot of enemies will not have any defense against the plague or the... Sometimes not even against the fire if you look at the enemy type or cryo and stuff like that. So as you can see, this class can be super important and you can even make it kind of like... I would argue that you could just give it to any class you like because then you'll be using just grenades to kill bigger groups of enemies. And if you know how the game works, usually if you kill an enemy there will be 2 or 3 or 5 or 6 or 10 enemies behind that. So I think the fire grenades or a variation of the fire grenades can be really useful with this one. Scatter. Less scatter for... This is the less scatter for the assault rifle machine gun. This is the one you really want. That other one with the SMG might not be as good as this one. But it's also kind of annoying that they split them off like this. This is a heavy defensive class. The stationary defense deployable damage. Now, this is the part of the game that doesn't make sense, and I'll show you why. Because I think this affects anything you deploy if you go by this logic, so it's not only the turrets, but it's also going to be some other stuff. I haven't really tested it out, but well, if someone tests it, let me know, because I just don't have enough time to do all of this. You have energy, fire, and just the assault turrets over here, the chin gun turrets. But then you also have the ARs, the artificial robots or whatever they are. You also have the drones, the industrial AR, the recreational AR, but also the combat AR plus. You also have the spiders. Let me see if I can find the spider cocoons over here. Yeah, look at this. It's not very clear if this bonus will affect these as well, but I just want to mention that. Maybe it will change in the future, or maybe, who knows. Also more interesting, this one has a reduced damage. I think it's just a global damage reduction value, but you need to use the medicine for this to work, so it's kind of interesting because you can hide behind your defenses, throw grenades, shoot big guns, take less damage, and then just use this one for firing accuracy when you fire the last bullet. But that means you'll also reload, so depending on the weapon, you might reload for a longer amount of time. So this is pretty good as it stands, but it's a very cost-intensive build because you'll need to use a lot of your resources for this to work. Meaning, you can just... You have to disassemble you can disassemble your turrets if you like, but you'll have to disassemble a lot of your equipment to just build the turrets. And the turrets themselves are actually quite hard to build. I have one of the turret recipes over here so you can see it. Yeah, it will need a Gatling gun. The fire turret will need a Vermin's Death, which this one is super easy to make, but this one is much harder to make because you need the beast as well. Let me see if I have the beast. No, we don't even have the beast. So yeah, it's going to be very hard to build the turrets yourself. So that's why this class is a little bit weak, because you can get the grenades more or less, and that will be a very interesting way to use this class, because you get so much damage with this alone, but the other ones are just much weaker, and they don't really help that much. So, Spaceborn Ghosts. So the Spaceborn Ghosts are kind of like the better variant to using the Eclipse blades, because they offer a lot more utilities. You have the athletics, you have the combat reflexes, and then you also have the immune response. So you don't get hit a lot, but when you get hit, you have a lowered chance to get injured. And so this is where you kind of lose it, because each hit in stealth mode triggers this. You have a bigger crit chance, but it's not such a big crit chance that it matters that much. Proper nutrition, which means you get more HP regeneration, but the idea is that this is kind of a waste, because you shouldn't get hit in the first place, and if you get hit you don't get an injury, so this is not really that important. The workroom is also pretty funny because it stuns the enemies, so you don't really have anything for offensive purposes. Now this can be used for offensive purposes if you just kill one enemy every turn, which is kind of interesting, but think about it, you also have a cooldown, so if you're fighting a big battle you'll only trigger this once and then that's it, that's gone. The problem with the Spaceborn Ghosts is that these three skills over here are useless, totally useless, but like I said, this is the best defensive class in the game, plus you get the defense, proper nutrition. Sadly, this is why Percy is so good, because he has 150 HP, so this perk over here will benefit mostly the classes that have a lot of HP, because they get shot, they get injured maybe, they are left with 100 HP, and this will heal them up quite fast, and the other things will just make sure they don't get shot again, so yeah. Not really that good, is it? Terror pack. Now this one is an interesting one because, as you can see, you have regeneration, but it's a trigger one. I'm not sure what regeneration actually does, if it heals if it heals you based on total max HP or something like that, but I think that's the way it works. So what this basically does is, when you're hitting your pain threshold and you get stunned, you'll get more health regeneration, but it's such a hard build to use, and the funny part about this build is that you need to have Quasimorphosis working for you. And generally, having Quasimorphosis is bad, especially at higher levels. The fun part is the ritualism over here, because if you eat gvak, you have a chance of converting the enemies to be your allies, which is kind of funny, but to be honest, if you use this, you probably need a high amount of them, and that means you need to have a lot of enemies. That means, yeah, just too many ifs, and that doesn't really work. Paculon and Pacos, this is arguably very good in the endgame, but if you're killing the bosses of the Quasimorphs, that means, or the Barons, that probably means you don't really need this class either way. Cannibalism, this one is annoying. And this is the fun part over here. So this is a basic perk that can be used almost on all classes, because 20% of the Quasimorphosis effects affect you as well. I think it can go up to 40%, I'm not sure, I don't remember. But just think about it. If the enemies get more HP and more damage, maybe you also get a bonus, a few of those bonuses. So this can actually turn a melee class that is very, very weak into a melee class that is very good. But again, there's just too many strings attached in my opinion, because you also will need guns to kill the Barons of Quasimorphs. But this is kind of like the best melee class. So you have a semi-melee class in the form of the Eclipse Blades, which is very, very weak to the point that I don't recommend you use it. And this is the only melee class that can be used. So, X-Rage, just amazing all around. Also think about it, there are a lot of weapons that you can throw, and a lot of weapons that pierce through enemies, or weapons that have a lot of accuracy. Yeah, this is a lot more fun, to be honest. But mostly because of these two skills over here. Sadly, the other stuff is not as good. Also, I think if you transform yourself into a Baron, you will get full HP, and when you transfer back, you'll also have full HP. So, this is an interesting way of playing the game, but to be honest, it needs so much investment and so much... Yeah, it's not really worth it. You can kind of try a semi-build, but you also have a lot of levels that don't have Quasimorphosis, so if you take this on other builds, it will not be as good because, well, I would say about 75% of your missions will have a lot less Quasimorphosis than usual, and 25% of your mission will not have any Quasimorphosis at all. So this will be good if the developers change some things around, but as it is right now, it's just a novelty class that probably people will not play because of the way it works. You don't really want to fight the Barons in melee, trust me. Now let's go to Valkyrja Squad, which is one of the more interesting ones because it's a very hard one to describe and to explain what it actually does. If you look at it, it doesn't really have a lot of synergies. Having an SMG with piercing damage is amazing because the SMGs can also be silenced, and that will kind of be the basis for this. So let me show you. Yeah, over here, I think this is probably the best SMG I found which has silencer. So 20 to 46 damage, 4 to 6 bullet shot, range is 4, has the laser sight and silencer, so this makes it a super good weapon for this one. And if you max it out, it can kind of be your best friend for a very long time. Valkyrja Squad is arguably the best class outside of the top 3 because of stuff like this. You also have the heal wound plus 5%, so this will be a massive help in the beginning of the game where those ones just don't heal. So SMGs that can pierce with heals that heal wounds that heals faster, plus with this one over here, shock effect 20%. Now this is a bit annoying because it doesn't really specify what it does. I don't think this increases the shock damage, I think it just increases the effect done by shock, meaning... I don't know, it's hard to explain. It might increase the debuffs applied by the shocks caused by... What am I saying? It might increase the effects of the wounds caused by shock weapons. But it might also be related to just the shock effect that adds on top of the other debuffs on enemies. So it's a little bit annoying. Never really explained how it works. Just correlated with a few shock weapons. So yeah, you're going to shoot a lot of lightning bolts at your enemies, but the problem with all of this is that As you can see, the damage is very small and you need to hit an enemy a lot of times. Plus, this is a sniper rifle with shock, which has pierce through, which makes this one vastly more useful, because if you hit, let's say, 50 damage, that can probably kill a lot of enemies, and I think this just builds up even more shock on the enemy, and I think the shock just reduces their accuracy overall. We should have a backup shock gun, shock pistol. So yeah, this is probably not as useful in the beginning of the game, but it will be much more useful in the end game. So it's a weird thing to have until you get the shock weapons, and good luck trying to unlock a recipe or unlock the formula for it. Yeah, good luck with that. Duty shift is also one of those useless things. You consume less calories, but you have to consume addictive medicine for that to happen. Which is kind of a shame, because this could have had some really good utility, but overall it feels like it's one of the worst in the game. Skipping a turn in stealth mode activates precise shot, so this is a little bit annoying because you need to hide. And then you also get a big crit chance, which, as you can see, plays into the piercing chance of this over here, the SMGs, and that will be kind of fun. And the tactical reload, where if you reload, you get a dodge chance. The problem with all of this is that this massively consumes your calories, because it's so easy to do this. Skipping a turn in stealth mode is very easy, because you'll do it a couple of times to see if there are enemies behind doors, and also this one, reloading happens quite a lot, right? Right. So this is the biggest problem of this class over here. As you can see, the right side stuff is basically useless, or would actually hinders you from using the left ones more reliably. Yeah, so that's kind of like the boring stuff. So now let's switch to the fun stuff. We already talked about the Rat Kings. So, Phoenix Brigade, and why is it so good? Because of the battery damage multiplier. And trust me, there are a lot of interesting ways to use this. So basically energy weapons, you may say, right? Right, but that's not all of the weapons you'll get. For example, this is using battery ammo. So it's an assault rifle with energy ammo, but has armor penetration, overclocking, and incendiary. So as you can imagine, this can have some very, very interesting effects. Oh, but this uses gasoline. What? I forgot about that. Okay, let's switch to the next one. Wait, so does the pistol use also gasoline? No, I guess the plasma rifles use this one. That's a weird thing. It feels like this should use energy ammo, but I understand why it doesn't. Just put gasoline and you have a deadly weapon. Kinda funny anyway. So yeah. Imagine this has more of everything. You know, the bonuses you can get from the DLT power supply. Where did I put those DLT things? Well, yeah, I guess the problem is I don't have a lot of those things to show you, and I really need to show you the DLT ammo bonuses. Anyway, this is the normal ammo. So 8% critical hit. The makeshift battery ammo is kind of useless, to the point where I would not even recommend using it, but you have the DLT batteries as well, so 20% more crit chance, more accuracy, and less scatter. So as you can imagine, if you're using DLT batteries, this will be immense. By the way, you also have the Elerium, which is an ammo type that spoils, but to the point... Well, let's just say that the bonuses from the Elerium are to the point where it makes it seem like you're cheating. So yeah, judging all of the incendiary stuff and the crit stuff and all of those things, this is a massive bonus, and that's why I think this is kind of like the number 2 class in the game. And you also have the Arsonist, which increases your chance of burning the enemy, and you'll just create a lot of fire pits everywhere to the point where enemies don't really recover from that, and they cannot even attack you. And Pyromaniac just means the fire duration will be bigger, and the burning time will... One more action point. Well, I think it means the fire will stay longer on the ground, but it also increases the burning duration of enemies. So if an enemy catches fire, they'll burn for longer amounts of time, and you'll actually have kind of like a barrier between you and the enemy. You also have to think about the weapons and their various use. Because you'll also have things like this one over here, the Crusader. Here's through Incendiary. So if you're going to use... Yeah, these are amazing. Plus the beam damage is pretty good, and the beam wounds are actually pretty catastrophic in my opinion. They also... I think it's one of the highest damaging weapons just because of the beam wounds being a little nastier than the other ones. So yeah, overall, you're just going to get a class that basically burns everything to cinder, to ash. And these all go so well together to the point where you cannot really find enemies that can resist any of these effects. Even if they have, let's say, a lot of beam resistance, you will still do a lot of damage to them because they also will need fire resistance. And you don't really have beam and fire resistance in the same package a lot of times, plus the wounds caused by the beams, yeah. Just an amazing combo. And over here, elemental resist is kind of meh, because you need to get shot, and if you get shot, usually you'll die. If you get, let's say, hit by poison, that means you'll die anyway, so depends on your luck. I don't think this is very useful, the elemental resist one, because it doesn't last a long time and it's kind of hard to trigger anyway. Just think about it like this, if you get shot and you get an injury, the elemental resist is not really that good anymore. The reload duration is also kind of an interesting one. Shooting a weapon, yeah. Laser plasma, yeah, right. So shoot a weapon to trigger this one. This is one of the more interesting ones because if I think it says laser and plasma, but I think if you shoot something else, it doesn't trigger this one. So if you have a sniper rifle and keep it in reserve until you see the big enemies, this will be more reliable to use. And the taste of blood, well, more regeneration, but yeah, just the damage potential of this build with coupled with a few defensive abilities over here just makes it so good. Plus, in the early game and in the mid game, no one will be able to resist the damage you can have with these three things over here. So I give it such a high score just because of the damage output you can make. Okay, let's just say like this. You'll be dealing enough damage to kill anything in the early and the mid game, and even a little bit beyond, because they'll just need to walk on the fire a little more, and that's kind of like it for them. Plus, you have such a wide variety of weapons that use the batteries, the energy ammo, to the point where it's kind of easy to improve one. Let me see if we have one that we can improve. Yeah, the Flash M. So let me look at, okay, let's say like this. Hey, look at how easy it is to upgrade, let's say, a weapon 15 levels. So this weapon, if you upgrade it 15 levels, it will have the damage of one of... I guess it's still a mid-game gun. But you also just upgrade... I don't know why, but it seems like it's a lot easier to get tier 5 to 6. Oh, this is... What? Oh, wow. Yeah, so I guess this is kind of like a bit overpowered in my opinion. It's so much easier to get a few energy recipes, and the ones you can get are really cool. So this plasma generator over here, and yeah, I'll not even go into debating that any further because as you can see it has some really strong effects. The problem is that the normal kinetic guns are not really that good in the beginning, and even a gun, if you give it a lot of upgrades, let's say we want to upgrade a shotgun 15 times, right? This might seem like it's a lot of damage, but cut resistance is very often found in the game, and besides, you will still have the limitations of the reload, the limitations of the durability, the limitations of the scatter, the limitation of... too many limitations overall, while the energy weapons don't seem to have any of those limitations anyway. Let's go to the Angels of Spade now, because we have talked so much about those ones. Precise shot, man, this is basically useless. Dismantler, this is actually very good because increasing your amputation chance means that every time you cause an injury, it might kill the enemy or it might just cause catastrophic damage. This is actually one of the things in the game, one of the active perks that is actually useful in the game, which is kind of rare anyway. I think a lot of people will use this one just because it gives you the instant kill potential, or they just might drop their weapon to the point where they're useless anyway. Plus with the precise shot, if you skip a turn in stealth mode, and then you have the dismantler bonus, yeah, you can probably just kill a lot of enemies outright anyway. You also have the lethal shot, so more accuracy and more range crit chance. The first shot to the full magazine. I guess this one is a little harder to pull off, but this is one of the classes that eats a lot of food. The only reason this is number 3 in my choice is because you need a lot of food. And some of these buffs are very conditional, so this is a class you'll play in a very specific way. Also have the ranged accuracy, you'll also have the armor penetration, which is the biggest thing ever. Now, it's not very clear if this stacks with armor penetration on guns, or if it's additive, or if it's multiplicative. I guess it depends on the developers. Armor penetration already ignores 35% of the target's armor, so I'm not sure how that stacks, but as you can imagine, you'll basically be burning enemies down, or if you'll be killing them so fast to the point where you don't even notice they have armor. So with this upgraded to the max and a good gun that either has armor penetration or even piercing, you'll most likely just feel like you're killing basic enemies all the time, which is great. Also, the pocket artillery means you deal a lot more bleeding damage. I think there's upgrades in a very weird way. I think you can reach max of 6 with it. I'm not sure, I don't remember the exact numbers, but this just means if you ignore the target's armor and you have a weapon that can pierce through the enemies and they get a wound, that means, well, by the way, this is I think only available for the 7.97 ammo, so this probably only counts for the weapons that use this specific ammo type, which is not really mentioned over here, but I think that's how it works. So if you have a weapon with heavy ammo, not 50 cal, but heavy ammo, that's how it used to be. This will do a lot of bleeding damage, so your best shot will be with machine guns and assault rifles over here, and that means you'll be able to hit your targets, you'll be able to wound your targets, you'll be able to make them bleed very fast. So it's kind of like the burning damage of the other class, but not as good as it could be. Plus this one you get more amputation chances, but the problem with this one is that you need a lot of food with you, and you don't really have anything for defense. Now on the other hand, these assault rifles have the opportunity to become the best in the game, and well, it says armor penetration for the assault rifle and machine gun, right? Right. This is an assault rifle. Or it is a machine gun. That has bipod and pierce through. Actually, it uses heavy cal ammo 20.7, so it doesn't really work that well. So let me find a good assault rifle. I think I had one of the more advanced models over here. Oh yeah, over here, look at this. So 7.97 ammo. 28 to 54, the range on this weapon is 5. It can hold 24 bullets and it can fire 2 or 4, so yeah. It's only tech level 6. Plus it looks very cool. Space AK. So this is where kind of like this class shines a lot with weapons like this ones. The only problem will be that you'll have to manage durability of the weapon to such a high degree where it becomes even boring. So you really need a secondary weapon that can finish wounded enemies or just kill certain enemies. Or use a lot of grenades. As you can see, this one is a little harder to use because you need basically the endgame guns, otherwise you'll be struggling a lot. I'll show you some of the sniper rifles, but that's even more annoying. So this is, well, probably this is a better explanation and a better example. Get this beautiful assault rifle over here. It has 32 to 53, range of 5, rate of fire 3 to 6 bipod, and pierce, which is just one of the best combinations ever. So yeah, this is very gun dependent, this class over here. Other than that, you can just combine them to get the stuff you really want. For example, I recommend you make, let's say, the Phoenix Brigade left side, and on the right side, you can just put the defensive stuff of the other classes. And you can even make yourself quite a great melee build as well. But to make the melee build, obviously you need a lot of defensive stuff. So probably you'll need a hardened. Probably you'll need the dodges. So with the hardened and the dodges, and the terror pack over here, the Axe Rage. Yeah, this one, like I said, is very situational. Doesn't really improve that much. And probably with cannibalism, you can kind of make it work more or less in the end game, where you're just going to survive a lot of shots. I mean, nothing will really hit you. So yeah. But to be honest, I really recommend you focus on an economy first. So all of the classes you build will have the Marauder perk from the Tanorat class. And if you already have the Marauder perk and you already have this, you might as well get the shotgun one, because it makes your shotgun ammo do 50% more damage, and shotgun ammo is a lot easier to find and to maintain throughout the game, while the battery ammo and the heavy ammo is a little harder to use and to make and to maintain good stockpile of it. I guess you need to be looting. So if you want to play a game at a good pace, you probably need to think from the beginning what weapon you want to use, what ammo type you want to use, stockpile grenades, stockpile a lot of other stuff. You can even have a melee build that uses grenades, because that means if you throw a grenade in the back of the line, the enemies cannot do anything but stand and fight you, and the other enemies cannot join their friends. So it's also about denial of area, denial of space. I don't know. I guess it depends on how they upgrade these systems as well. Also, when you're choosing a class over here, make sure it actually is in line with the bonus of the clone. So, as you can imagine, if you're using energy guns and you have a weapon range of +2, that will make the energy guns so much more useful. If you're using a melee build, Kenji Yukio, but to be honest, Kenji Yukio's ability is useful on anything. Item capacity is for grenades, so definitely goes with the grenade build. Pistol accuracy, I guess it depends on the weapon choice, but it can definitely work as well. You also have Oberon, Lucas over here, which seems like he's a fan favorite overall. Which means you can just use a lot of energy weapons or a lot of heavy ammo weapons like a pistol, an SMG, or a sniper rifle. So just all around many more weapons. Well, that's kind of like all I wanted to say about the classes and how they can be used and what good they can do. Anyway, choose your best classes, but you'll always have a ton of rat in reserve. Bye bye.